8 nights of Hanukkah, 8 nights of winning insights.
They may come out slow, so you might be able to get a better number. Wow, they're favored.
With SportsGrid, every night is another chance to win.
No pick sixes today, they cover. So let's crunch it up. Let's make it happen. Let's give you our favorite props.
Let your Hanukkah winnings brighten your celebrations. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Germanary. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. On the final day of 2024, it is New Year's Eve. We thank you for being with us bright and early as you get ready to ring in a new year in all of the festivities that you will see on this Tuesday. That includes a final day of this calendar year, Joe, that is all about one thing in my estimation. Read the shirt. It says college football, period. 5 college football games on this final day of 2024. 4 bowl games in this sensational bowl season. And the start, Germanary, of the quarterfinal round of the first ever 12-team college football playoff tonight in the Fiesta Bowl between Boise State and Penn State. We'll recap the end of Week 17 around the National Football League, a Monday night shootout in Santa Clara in the rematch of the NFC Championship game from a season ago, and set the stage for week number 18, the last and final week of this National Football League regular season in 2024.
Yeah, I am all for it, Ben. We've been waiting, it feels like forever, to get the college football playoff off and running, but the bowl season has certainly delivered, unlike the NFL Week 17 and probably 18 this season will.
Listen, favorites are winning in a very large way. Favorites of more than a field goal are winning in an even higher clip, and that's what we saw last night in Santa Clara. A game, Joe, that perhaps we should have anticipated but did not, because there was not many playoff implications on the line last night in the NFC title game rematch from a season ago between the Lions and the 49ers. San Francisco, a disastrous season plagued by injury, already eliminated from NFC playoff contention. The Lions already with a focus on week number 18 in the regular season finale to end out the year against the Minnesota Vikings. So last night's game didn't really have a ton at stake. So would Dan Campbell play the starters for Detroit? Would he rest guys to get ready for that matchup against the Vikings that will decide the NFC North in the NFC's number 1 overall seed? Dan Campbell said, I owed it to the guys to go out there and earn a victory in the rematch, and that they certainly did. 40-34. The Lions beat San Francisco in a high-scoring affair last night in Santa Clara. Detroit covers as a 3.5-point road favorite. Joe, a total of 50 and a hook. Still never stood a chance. 74 combined points between the two sides. It goes way over.
Yeah, it cracked me up last night. I don't. Anybody who thought Dan Campbell wouldn't play the starters hasn't been paying attention here. 14 straight Detroit had lost on the road against the 49ers until, of course, last night where they put up 475 yards. And I believe, Ben, the first franchise to have 2 receivers and 2 running backs to have 1,000 all-purpose yards or more in a season. Juggernaut is what they call this team.
An offensive juggernaut for sure. Defensively, some questions, but we'll talk about it in just a little bit. Maybe I was convinced by right side, but I did believe that Detroit would play its starters, but maybe rest them into the second half. The 49ers never made that a possibility. Answering Detroit score for score last night on a Monday to end out Week 17. Jared Goff, 303 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, 18 carries, $117 on the ground, and a score. Jamison Williams, multiple touchdowns last night. Detroit is an offensive wagon. Detroit is 14-2. They will get ready to host the Minnesota Vikings in game 272, the finale of the entirety of the regular season on Sunday night in Motor City. The 14-2 Lions, the 14-2 Vikings for a game that will decide not just the division in the NFC North, but the number 1 overall seed in the conference, as good as it gets for a regular season finale. Before we get to Week 18, bowl season rolls on in college football. 5 games on this Tuesday, on New Year's Eve, including the college football playoff resuming tonight in Glendale, Arizona. But yesterday, just 1 bowl game in Nashville, the Music City Bowl between Missouri and Iowa. In Mizzou, rallies back from a double-digit deficit in the second half to claim victory number 10 this year, 27-24 against the Hawks. Missouri even covers as a 2.5-point favorite. Joe, a total of 40 and a hook. Skies over. 13 games for Iowa this year. 10 of them to the over. The Iowa Hawkeyes have played in the most overs in FBS college football this year. Let that sink in for just a moment.
It's kind of crazy. Wild game for one that only had a total of 40 and a half at kickoff. I thought that was pretty funny. And yet, the next thing you know, by the time we get to the second quarter, it's 14-14. And it just went on from there. So, but another entertaining game, one of many that we've had over the last month, Ben, in bowl season. And I anticipate that will continue, even with some teams missing a lot of their starters from the regular season.
That will be the case, no doubt about it, but it should be an exciting New Year's Eve. 5 bowl games, including a college football playoff quarterfinal tonight in the Fiesta Bowl. We will get you set for everything throughout these 3 hours. NBA action last night, 7 games around the association, including the NBA's best team, who leaves no doubt last night on the road in San Francisco, winning by nearly 20. That's the Cleveland Cavaliers, 113-95 over Golden State. The Cavs cover as a 4.5-point road favorite.
Yeah, and the line felt a little head-scratching since they played each other back in November, and the Warriors were a much better team at that point, and they got smoked. And now they got smoked again last night in Golden State. So things looking great for the Cavs, not so great for the Golden State Warriors.
28-4 straight up for the Cavaliers, a cover in 22 of those 28 wins. The Dubs started 12-3. They have gone 4-13 since that point. Happy belated birthday to LeBron James. Tiger Woods, my mother, Lynn Stevens, by the way, shares a birthday with some supreme athletes. Birthday number 40 for LeBron yesterday. And, Joe, he just wanted to remind everybody that despite being in the NBA for more than 2 decades, he still could, if necessary, play 5 to 7 more years, but probably won't do that.
Yeah, please, LeBron, let's not do that. Let's just make your 40th just the best year, and then we'll never have to see you again. It would be fantastic.
The New York Jets, a well-run organization by Woody Allen's kid, Woody Johnson's kid, Woody Allen, great director, Woody Johnson's kid, and they are going to interview, as reports stated yesterday, Rex Ryan and Ron Rivera.
Listen, Woody Allen's kid would be an upgrade, if we're being honest here, Ben. So it is the Jets after all. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Let the dumpster fire begin.
Yep. It is going to continue. Josh Allen has started 114 consecutive games in the National Football League, including the playoffs. That is the longest active streak among National Football League quarterbacks. Sean McDermott says that Josh Allen is going to start on Sunday in the regular season finale, preserving that streak against the New England Patriots.
Yeah, for like a series,
Yeah.
and then that'll probably be the end of that. But the Iron Man, well done, Josh Allen, especially with how he played the game his first couple of years in the league.
Ceremonial first snap, and that might be it. The line actually working against the Bills from yesterday's number at a flat 3, now to 2.5 in Foxborough. Don't forget about college basketball. Conference slates around the country really starting to blossom, and Tennessee remains the number 1 team in the AP top 25. UCLA up 7 spots to 15th in the nation, and there's only 4 undefeated teams, including Drake, ranked Ben McCollum's Bulldogs, you cowards. They still are unranked at this moment. Monday night in Santa Clara. Up next.
In the heart of winter, when nights grow long, we come together under these lights. A team, united by purpose. Fans bound by passion, each holding a small flicker of hope in their hands. At SportsGrid, we believe that even the darkest nights can't dim the unity we share. One team, one stadium, one shining moment. This holiday season, we shine brighter together. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A Monday Night Football finale, not just for Week 17, but the entirety of the 2024 NFL regular season on the second to last day of 2024. But did it have meaning on a Monday night in Santa Clara in an NFC Championship game rematch from just a season ago between the Lions and the 49ers? Detroit blew a 17-point lead in last year's NFC title matchup, where they looked to exact some revenge against this version of a San Francisco team that was already eliminated from playoff contention. And the game did not really have any postseason implications for the Detroit Lions. It all comes down to Week 18 in Game 272, that regular season finale between the Lions and the Vikings to decide the NFC North and the number one overall seed in that conference. But don't tell that to the actual game that we saw last night in Santa Clara. An absolute shootout with two teams exchanging offensive blow after offensive blow. But ultimately, if you're going to get involved in a shootout, in a high-scoring affair, even with a depleted defense for Detroit, the Lions are going to win, as they did last night, 40-34 on the road in Northern California. Detroit covers as a 3.5-point road favorite. Joe, a lofty total of 50 and a hook goes way over 74 combined points between the two sides on a Monday Night Football finale to week number 17.
Tale of two halves, really, for the Detroit Lions and for the 49ers last night. Whatever that was in the first half we got from the Niners clearly disappeared, namely the running game. They had a lot of success early in this game. Then once the Detroit Lions decided, all right, Brock Purdy, you're going to have to beat us, that was the problem. The running game disappeared, and then they just kind of teed off on Brock Purdy in that second half. But listen, it was still close even in the third. They missed a couple of field goals by Jake Moody that could have brought this game a little bit closer. They had their shot, the 49ers. They were clearly playing with some motivation there. There was nobody throwing in the towel, but ultimately the better team and the more talented team ended up winning out in the second half. I mean, 4 unanswered scores, Ben, will put anybody away, and that's especially against Detroit.
Still some defensive issues for the Lions to iron out. Will it plague this team in a deep postseason run, which has been the expectation for Detroit all season long? We'll debate that up next. We'll talk about the Week 18 regular season finale against the Minnesota Vikings and what is at stake, because last night's outcome really no implications whatsoever on the regular season finale. But, Joe, these two teams scored 5 touchdowns on their opening 5 offensive drives. 3 for the Niners, 2 for the Lions. Last night, today is the final day of 2024. Last night was the second to last day of 2024. Tomorrow's 2025. Last night was the first NFL game since 1937 that featured at least 10 offensive touchdowns and not a single punt. But the story in the second half, as the Lions did trail 21-13 at the break, they came out, got the ball first in the third quarter, scored. 2-point conversion, even up the game at 21-all. It was 2 Brock Purdy interceptions that resulted directly in 2 Detroit touchdowns, and that Jake Moody missed field goal that you mentioned led to a Lions-made field goal on the ensuing offensive possession. That was the difference in the game for Detroit. The Lions cover as a 3.5-point road favorite. They are 10-5 against the number as the favored side this year. Under Dan Campbell since the start of 2021, 70 total games now. They are 48-22 against the spread. That is a cover percentage north of 68%. Nobody else in the NFL is covering in more than 62% of their games in the last 3+ years, now nearly 4 seasons. And it's that mentality, Joe, that Dan Campbell has instilled in his organization in the Motor City that leads to the Lions playing starters for all 4 quarters, even in a game that really did not impact their outlook for the postseason. Here's the head ball coach, Dan Campbell, on why exactly he made that call.
I thought a lot about it. I thought about it leading up to the game. I thought about it last night. I told the staff. But I ended up settling on the right thing to do was play these guys. And because we owed it to the team, and it was just one of those positions we were in. It's just hard to say who you're going to sit. And it's not fair to ask guys to play that haven't been prepared to play, So yeah, that was tough, and I think the biggest thing is there was things we wanted to do better than we did last week, and we did. We cleaned a lot of things up offensively. I thought defensively we talked about getting takeaways. We got takeaways, and so that'll always serve you well going into the next week. And look, there was never going to be anything You know, we knew what this is. You're out on the West Coast, you go, hey, man, it's all good. That's what we do. You know what I mean? This is what we do. Like, we love it hard. And this is our deal right now. So we're looking forward to this, everything about this week.
And again, that is the mentality. If Donnie Rightside was here, he would probably slam Dan Campbell for the entire minute of that statement and everything he had to say. Maybe I bought into DRS. Maybe I bought into the idea, Joe, in my fantasy championship last night with my opponent, Brandon, having 4 Lions that I was hoping Dan Campbell would rest his starters. He did not. Everybody performed incredibly well offensively in that shootout in Santa Clara. You see it there. I got slaughtered, by the way, in my fantasy championship. But, Joe, that is what Dan Campbell and Detroit do, and we saw it last night on the road in Santa Clara.
Listen, for how long now we've been saying this team has taken on the personality of their head coach. He was good luck trying to figure out. I think what he said was interesting. Like, who do you decide doesn't play? And good luck doing it that way, because that's not what he stands for. That's not who he is, and that's not who this team is. And I fully anticipate they'll head into Minnesota, the Minnesota game this week with the same mentality. Keep it rolling. If it ain't broke, Ben, don't fix it.
A great night to bet overs on props, and certainly never bet an under, as you saw there with the offensive production last night. Detroit is 14-2, and they will play in their regular season finale for the division next.
As the candles flicker, a new tradition shines. 8 nights of Hanukkah, 8 nights of winning insights.
Like, they may come out slow, so you might be able to get a better number. Wow, they're favored.
With SportsGrid, every night is another chance to win.
No pick sixes today, they cover. So let's crunch it up. Let's make it happen. Let's give you our favorite props.
Let your Hanukkah winnings brighten your celebrations. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word. Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. In the heart of winter, when nights grow long, we come together under these lights. A team, united by purpose. Fans, bound by passion. Each holding a small flicker of hope in their hands. At SportsGrid, we believe that even the darkest nights can't dim the unity we share. One team, one stadium, one shining moment. This holiday season, we shine brighter together. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
Don't call it a meaningless Monday to Dan Campbell and Detroit. The Lions outlast the San Francisco 49ers in the second half to win the NFC Championship rematch 40-34. Everybody said they had a sour taste in their mouth, not from the moldy bread they had to eat after all of the defensive injuries, but from last year's NFC title game, and Detroit vanquishes that taste. But now, Joe, because last night's outcome really had no impact on the overall season outlook for the Lions, Detroit gets ready for the Week 18 regular season finale. And here's what stands out to me first and foremost as we take a look at the Lions' outlook for all of this NFL campaign. 14-2 is the record for the Lions, and yet they have to play in a game on Sunday that will dictate if they're the 1 seed in the NFC or the 5 seed, if they'll have home field advantage the entirety of what they anticipate is a historic postseason run. The Lions have never even played in a Super Bowl, let alone win a Lombardi trophy, or if they are going to win a division or be a measly wild card team. 14-2 for the Lions, and they still haven't wrapped up the NFC North because of those Minnesota Vikings who have the same exact record.
And it's interesting, Ben, because we've talked about it a couple of times here with all of these injuries on the defensive side of the ball for Detroit. The market hasn't wavered. They still had them as a favorite, and nobody kind of talks about Minnesota. But the reality is, if you can score 40 points in an NFL game pretty much at the drop of a hat, then it really doesn't matter. You don't need a shutdown defense. You just need to get one more stop than the other team, because guess what? You're not stopping them. And that's exactly why they continue to win football games. And that's why they're going to have a shot to close it out at home and be 15-2 with the number 1 seed. If you can't stop them, you can't beat them, no matter what their defense is.
So let me ask you about that very idea, though, because the Lions have, in their last 4 games, allowed more than 32 points per game on average. They've also scored 37.5 per game in that span as well. Again, they're on average winning games by at least 5 points. At this time of year, they don't care if they're covering. If they win a game outright by a single point to ultimately win a Super Bowl championship, fantastic. But this Lions team, Joe, historic in the last 2 NFL seasons, trying to play in its first Super Bowl in franchise history for most of the year, now has been an NFC championship favorite and a very short favorite to win a Super Bowl as well. Do you believe the significant injuries, namely on the defensive side of the football, will plague this Lions team come that postseason run?
So are they as good as what they could have been without the injuries? No, obviously. They would have been a true juggernaut on both sides of the ball there, and not even remotely close. But now, because they had those injuries, yes, they're a little more susceptible on the defensive side. But that they were never going to win because of defense. This ain't the 2005. This ain't the Ravens. This isn't. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a team that was always going to win a Super Bowl because they're dropping 40-plus points on you and you can't stop them. I don't see how that has changed here. It's still the way they're going to win a championship, by playing a game just like they played last night. Good luck stopping them offensively.
And it is so fascinating because now everybody knows that, and yet Ben Johnson is just incredibly in his bag to call every play, even trick plays that work like it's in the schoolyard against 4th graders. That is how good the Lions are offensively. And part of the reason, as you heard from Dan Campbell, they wanted everybody to play for the entirety of the game to operate at its highest capacity, as we saw last night. But it's not just the defensive woes or the significant injuries to key contributors. It could also be the path and the position for Detroit. That will be, of course, all indicated by the result in Game 272. A further breakdown of this number later in our second hour. But the Lions are a 2.5-point favorite now on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Look at that total. 57 and a hook for regular season finale game 272 against Minnesota. Joe, that would be the highest number we have seen for an NFL game since 2021.
It's kind of crazy, is it not? But now the Lions with 5 games with 40 or more points this year. But you know what, Ben? 5 games, 40 points, no turnovers.
Very, very important. The Super Bowl odds entering the regular season finale. Next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on New Year's Eve. It is the final day of 2024, entering the final week of the National Football League regular season that begins on Saturday with a doubleheader in the AFC North, and then everything that is to come on the Sunday slate. Before we get to Week 18, here is where the Super Bowl 59 odds stand right now. A familiar name at the top. Number one seed in the AFC, the NFL's best record at this moment. That would be the Kansas City Chiefs, trying to make history, to be the first team ever to win a third consecutive Lombardi trophy, to be the first team ever that has played and won 2 consecutive Super Bowls and play in a third consecutive Super Bowl championship game as well. The Chiefs are the favorites at plus 370. The Lions, less than $1 behind at plus 460. The Bills at plus 550, third best number. The Ravens, a 7-1 price. If Baltimore handles Cleveland, as they are expected to on Saturday afternoon, as a 3-score favorite, the Ravens will clinch the AFC North. And the Eagles have already clinched the NFC East, plus 750 for Philadelphia. Those are the 5 best prices, Joe. You see the 5 next best prices to round out the top 10 on the other side. We'll get to those in just a moment. Of the favorites, of the teams with the shortest numbers right now around the National Football League, who do you believe might be worth a wager entering the regular season finale?
Well, let's just take the Chiefs out of there, right? Let's just assume that it's not going to be the Chiefs for the third straight year. Well, then you got to look at the Ravens or the Bills, right, as the team that coming out of the AFC. Although I do think the Chargers could be worth a stab early on in the playoffs. But let's just say Bills, Ravens, 550 and 7, right? So 7-1. Let's just call it 6-1 with the Bills. One of those two teams is going to be representing. If you don't think the Chiefs have enough momentum here and have enough left in the tank to make one more run at this, that's where the value lies in the AFC. I think it's a true coin flip on the NFC side. The Eagles, the Lions, the Vikings, the Packers, heck, even the Bucks and Rams could play spoiler here at some point along the way. So I think the AFC, it's 2 teams for me. In the NFC, Good luck. Flip a coin here between those teams. I don't think there is a clear favorite.
The Chiefs, of course, have the pedigree and the benefit of the doubt, and now, once again, they will host everything throughout the postseason, or at least that AFC title runs through Arrowhead. It will be the 7th consecutive season, all 7 years that Patrick Mahomes has been the starter for Kansas City. The Chiefs will try to play in an AFC championship game. The first 5, they hosted. Last year was the first time they had to go on the road, and they still made it to the Super Bowl, and they still won a Lombardi trophy for a 2nd consecutive season. Again, 8 previous times we have seen a team go back-to-back in the National Football League winning a Lombardi trophy. Never have any of those 8 prior teams that have won 2 consecutive Super Bowls even played in a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. We'll see if the Chiefs can at least make some more history this season in 2024. Joe, Detroit, as we shared earlier, a 2-1 favorite to win the NFC Championship. They are over $1 in front of Philadelphia. The Birds, the second best price, the number 2 seed in the NFC at plus 330. The Vikings have that 3rd best number, less than $2 behind their divisional foes at plus 380. So much will be determined, not just for the conference championship prices, but the conference playoff lineup in the NFC based on the result of Game 272 in the Motor City on Sunday night. So I do think it is worth mentioning that if Detroit loses that game, not expected to, 2.5-point home favorite against Minnesota, we know how high scoring the game is expected to be with an over-under that now stands at 57 and a hook. But if Detroit loses that game, then they would fall all the way to the 5 seed, having to go on the road to start their playoff run. They're not going to have to play in a cold weather city to begin. They would either play the Buccaneers or the Rams indoors in LA or in Tampa, Florida, but still not as favorable of a path. The Vikings expected to lose right now, expected to be that top wild card team, the 5 seed within the NFC. Joe, if that is not the case, and the Vikings pull off the upset in the regular season finale on Sunday night, what happens to those NFC championship odds, or better yet, the Super Bowl prices for those NFC contenders?
Yeah, I don't think much changes because I still think that Detroit, you get Rams or Bucks, right? Well, the Lions can outscore both those teams. Let's be realistic here. And I think another thing they showed you last night, Ben, was the fact that they can drop 40 points outdoor in any stadium. So I don't know that, if they go to Tampa, okay. I mean, there's another total that will be in the mid-50s or higher. And the same thing with the Rams. So either way, I don't see the Lions being an underdog in any game or any scenario if they don't beat Minnesota. I think they're going to continue to be the favorite throughout the rest of the playoffs. What are they? Are they going to be getting points against the Rams or the Bucks?
No. I wonder exactly what those odds look like even for the Vikings on the road, right, if it ends up being L.A. or Tampa. I say L.A. or Tampa because they could flip-flop. If the Buccaneers win and Tampa has to on Sunday to even earn that playoff berth, they're a 14.5-point home favorite against the Saints, and the Rams lose. L.A. right now predicted as a 3-point underdog against Seattle at home. We know Sean McVay doesn't care much for playing his starters in games that don't have a ton of meaning. Then the Bucs would be the 3 seed if the odds follow suit, and the Rams would be the 4 seed. I wonder if the Vikings ended up in L.A., who's the favorite? Is it Minnesota slightly? Is it a virtual pick'em for that opening round game in Super Wild Card Weekend? But, Joe, those prices on Minnesota, Green Bay, L.A., and Tampa, do any of those present value? Do any of those present more value than the rest in an NFC that you feel is basically a toss-up entering Week 18?
Yeah, it all depends on seeding here, right? And the early round matchups. Anybody, again, outside of having to go up against the Lions, I think is open for grabs. I think even if it is the Vikings in that 5 seed, I think the Rams or Bucks are certainly going to be live there with this Vikings team. I think the Packers, too, quietly will have a very interesting shot at upending whether it be the Eagles they're looking at here. I think there's an opportunity here for some of these bigger number teams like the Bucs, who have been there, and so have the Rams. A lot of experience in these playoffs here. I think it's going to be a wild one. But quite honestly, it could be one that all year long we've heard about the favorites dominating, right? Well, maybe the playoffs, it's all about the dogs this year.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how that goes because, Joe, as you mentioned, from week 13 on, favorites outright, 79.2%, the win percentage. And, yeah, we like to factor in the spread, but when it comes to playoff football, win a game by a point, your team is good, and those spreads will be a lot tighter, at least we anticipate. We'll talk more about the AFC playoff picture in just a little bit, but I will say compelling seeding still at stake throughout the weekend, and a lot will be impacted by what we see in the doubleheader on Saturday. The Ravens win. They clinch the AFC North. They are expected to hammer the Browns. They're a 3-score favorite. The Steelers are a slight dog against the Bengals since he's trying to stay alive in that AFC playoff picture. But if Pittsburgh wins, they clinch the 5 seed, that being Baltimore winning as well. What would that do to LA on Sunday? Because you want to be the 5 seed in the AFC to take on the 4 seed Houston and not the 3 seed Baltimore. More around the NFL up next.
As the candles flicker, a new tradition shines. 8 nights of Hanukkah, 8 nights of winning insights.
They may come out slow, so you might be able to get a better number. Wow, they're favored.
With SportsGrid, every night is another chance to win.
No pick sixes today, they cover. So let's crunch it up. Let's make it happen. Let's give you our favorite props.
Let your Hanukkah winnings brighten your celebrations. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Let's set the stage and the atmosphere for week number 18, our regular season finale around the National Football League. No short week Thursday night football game, 2 games on Saturday, everything else 14 on Sunday to determine playoff position, playoff spots, divisional championships, number 1 seeds in conferences as well. Josh Allen will make his 115th consecutive start on Sunday for Buffalo. He will probably take a snap. He will probably take a knee, and then he will be out of the football game. The Bills clinching the number 2 seed in the AFC on Sunday afternoon, throttling the New York Jets this past weekend. But the Iron Man, with the longest active starting streak of any quarterback in the National Football League, Joe, as we learned from Buffalo's head coach Sean McDermott yesterday, is going to at least start in the Bills' regular season finale in Foxborough on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and again, the old customary gets out there, takes the first snap, and then heads right to the locker room and leaves the stadium and put him in bubble wrap because you're going to need him here come playoff time. But it is pretty impressive given that the first couple of years of this kid's career, Ben, he didn't understand what it was like to slide. He didn't understand what it was like not to take the big hit. He was playing with a linebacker mentality early on in his career. And boy, oh boy, he got punished for it. So the fact that he's had this many games in a row, that's a testament. I mean, kudos to him. He's actually figured the game out. And that's probably why he's going to be your MVP and possible Super Bowl champion.
Yep, plus 550 number on the Buffalo Bills, that third best price to win a Super Bowl. A Super Bowl appearance is something that has evaded Josh Allen, an NFL MVP award. Also, the hardware that he has missed out on entering Week 18, greater than a $3 minus money favorite at minus 320 to win that award. The Bengals need to keep winning football games, of course, after they fell into an 0-3 hole. Only one time in this millennium has a team started winless 0-3 and made the NFL playoffs, the 2017 Houston Texans. Cincinnati hoping to become that second team and hoping that Chase Brown, the rookie running back who has come on in a large way for an offense that cannot miss, led by Joe Burrow as of late, really the entirety of this year, since he is hopeful that Chase Brown will play in week number 18. Left the game this past Saturday against the Denver Broncos with what they called a high ankle sprain, but they remain hopeful their rookie running back will play on Saturday night as the Bengals head to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers.
Hey, listen, I think it's going to be fascinating on what happens with that game, given the fact that the Steelers will know exactly what their fate is before that game kicks off. And will they even need Chase Brown, Cincinnati, at that particular point? Does Pittsburgh call off the dogs and say, okay, we live to fight another day? Do they risk losing 4 games in a row heading into the playoffs? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But if you're Cincinnati, you got to win the game. Bottom line, you got to win the game. So all hands will be on deck. I'm fairly certain if he can go, Chase Brown will go there.
Yeah, I think he will. And so the Ravens are a 17.5-point favorite against the Browns. If Cleveland, for whatever reason, pulls off the outright upset, Pittsburgh needs a win to win the AFC North. But Baltimore right now is a minus 20,000 favorite to win the division. They are going to win the AFC North more than likely. 99.5% chance, you would say. But I still do believe, Joe, there are stakes in the Steel City on Saturday night. Not just the Bengals needing to win to stay afloat in that AFC wildcard chase, trying to earn that last spot. But I think Pittsburgh would want to win the game as well, because if Pittsburgh wins, having already beaten the Chargers earlier this year, the Steelers would clinch the 5 seed. That is vital because the 5 seed would be on the road against Houston to start off the postseason. Of course, we have some questions about the Texans, where things stand right now. If you were to fall to the 6th seed, and Pittsburgh knows this better than anybody, you would have to go on the road to the Charm City to take on the Ravens. A much more desirable opening round game is to visit the Texans than it is to visit the Ravens.
Right, but it's still the NFL, so unfortunately, best laid plans there, Ben, including, right. I mean, the Browns just rolling over here against the Ravens. It's still a division rivalry game. It could be interesting here, but I do think Cincinnati and Pittsburgh probably the game of the week, with both teams, like you said, in need of a win, have to win, whereas Minnesota and Detroit, I don't think it's got the same juice because it's not as dire consequences if you lose that game. I think Cincinnati and Pittsburgh's the game of the week.
Yeah, it's a great game. It's now just a 1.5 spread in favor of who? The Bengals on the road in Pittsburgh. Joe, it's funny how we forget things sometimes during a long NFL season, but we knew the Pittsburgh Steelers' home stretch of the year is when that schedule became a gauntlet. They have lost 3 in a row, all 3 games as a dog. They have not covered once in this 3-game slide. Speaking of who, the New York Jets are going to interview who? Rex Ryan, their former skipper, and Ron Rivera? The Jets are going to Jets, brother.
And listen, there are worse guys. The thing with the Jets that cracks me up here, Ben, is that you would think the Jets would be talking about interviewing strictly general managers at this point and then let the general manager interview the head coach. But nope. We're just going to keep doing. We're going to hire a head coach, and then we'll figure and we'll let the general manager know that's who he's got to make work. What are we doing here, Jets? What are we doing?
Woody Johnson is doing, not Woody Allen, it would presume. But again, they could use a thing from that great script writer. Mike McCarthy not talking about his future in Dallas just yet. Mike, you don't have to talk about it. It's not your decision. You don't have a contract entering next year at the Star.
Mike, you don't have a future in Dallas. There's nothing to talk about. It's over. I mean, there is no future, so stop it. It's just ridiculous.
You beat the Bucs on Sunday night. It's not going to save your job, my friend. It's really just the flat-out part of it. Jerry already has told you what he's going to do. NBA recaps up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line to end out 2024. It is New Year's Eve. We end out our opening hour on this Tuesday. As you know, regular season finale week in the National Football League. Quarterfinal round of the college football playoff starts tonight. A lot of football coming your way over these next few weeks, but we are nearing the end, I know it is sad to say, of this football season. So some more focus will be paid to basketball, right around the association. conference slates around the country in college hoops starting to pick up just a little bit as well. It's a glorious time on the hardwood. 7 games last night on a Monday evening in the NBA, including the NBA's best team and 2 franchises that when they play one another, you hearken back to 4 straight NBA finals or 5 straight NBA finals, whatever it was, against each other. But right now, although the Cavaliers don't have LeBron James, they look like a team that played for NBA championships rather frequently within the last decade. The NBA's best team making a statement once more in San Francisco last night against the Warriors. 113-95, the victory for Cleveland on the road against the Dubs. Cleveland easily covers as a 4.5-point favorite. Total of 230 and a hook stays under. The Cavaliers, Joe, the NBA's best team entering, the NBA's best team still. Now 28-4 straight up, winners of 7 straight.
Yeah, I mean, and prior to this game, that win against Denver, right, 149-135. Now this is a tough road trip here because now they've got games against the Lakers and Dallas coming up. So this was a pretty good litmus test for this team here, heading on the road, seeing exactly if they could keep it up. We know they're good in Cleveland, but let's see how they do out on the road out west. So far, so good, but when Moses Moody is your leading scorer for the Warriors with 19 points, yeah, Steph Curry, you've got, there's some issues there with this Golden State Warriors team, no doubt.
There are some big-time issues with this Golden State team who started off this year, the first year after the dynastic run seemed to be coming to a close, the trade of Klay Thompson in the offseason and those summer months. But Golden State was here to say, we're not done just yet. They got off to a 12-3 start, one of the best in the association. From that point, with last night's loss against Cleveland, now 4-13 in their last 17. Not a good run for the Dubs. Meanwhile, for Cleveland, 28-4, NBA's best mark. 22 of those 28 wins, a cover as well. That's the best in the association, 23-9 against the spread. Best cover team in the NBA overall. Cleveland's pretty darn good. Other NBA scores from Monday. Game number 2, after the Sacramento Kings surprisingly dismissed Mike Brown. Win number 1 for interim head man Doug Christie. The Kings handling the shorthanded Mavericks at home to snap a 6-game slide. They were expected to win as a 6.5-point favorite. Joe, they do that, winning by 10 at home.
Yeah, and it was funny because it didn't start off great, Ben. Dallas led by 18 in the first quarter, and then eventually it was a 60-56 halftime score. So, it didn't start well. You were like, oh, yeah, sure, Mike Brown's the problem. But they ended up putting it together. It's a good win, but again, congratulations. Ultimately, the Kings, where does it go from here, Ben? I guess it can only go up, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Things aren't great in Sacramento for this Kings franchise right now. We've got De'Aaron Fox responding to Lou Williams on a show saying you don't know what you're talking about, but sometimes when there is scuttlebutt, when there is smoke, there is fire. Doesn't seem to be great for a Sacramento team that is still sub 500. The Nuggets outlast the Jazz in a high-scoring game. The Clippers beat the NBA's worst team in New Orleans. The Pelicans now 5-28. The Knicks beat the Wizards, the NBA's Eastern Conference's worst team. The Wiz are now 5-25. The Knicks win that game by 20. Joe, they cover as a 12.5-point favorite.
Yeah, and boy, Embiid looks like he's finally starting to get into a groove too, dropping 37 last night against the G League Trailblazers. So maybe, just maybe, some of these terrible teams starting to turn it around here, Ben.
37 points for JoJo, 9 boards as well, 12 of 13 from the charity stripe. That is pretty basketball. Philadelphia wins by 22. They easily cover as a 6.5-point road favorite. The fact they're only laying 6.5 on the road in the Rose City might be a different story, but the Sixers are now 13-17. A college football playoff preview to start hour 2 next.